Thank you, Admiral Chauhan. One of the good things about being on this panel is I'm following a bunch of Quad skeptics, so I don't feel particularly out of place. Let me start by saying this. I've spent the last 7 years traveling between Tokyo, Canberra, and New Delhi, talking to military officials, diplomats, academics, and you walk away underwhelmed with the idea of the Quad. And I'll get to why right now. If you look at the Quad in its, here's my take on the Quad in its most basic way. And that is in terms of its military potential and its economic potential, it has a long way to go. Militarily, here are the basic issues. Number one, the United States, Japan, and Australia have a very high level of interoperability. India is not in that interoperability grid. Abhijit Singh knows this, Admiral Chauhan knows this. In fact, the general consensus is that in terms of communications and surveillance technology, India may be a generation to a generation and a half behind the other three members. So if you want to do joint operations, it's problematic. Secondly, I've talked to the Australians at length about this, and they talk a good talk. But the bottom line is they are not interested in going into the South China Sea or the East China Sea. They say their strategic perimeter ends at the southern coast of Indonesia and Malaysia. And they're certainly not coming deep into the Indian Ocean to help India out at any point of time. Third, the Japanese are in the middle of a demographic disaster. I call them the aging samurai. And the reason for that is very simple. Their population is going from 126 million to 107 million by 2050. The median age is going from 46.5 to 53.3. And war is a young man's game. Ask the Japanese where they're going to find the people to man their battleships and their Aegis destroyers and so on. And the answer you get is we're not sure. Second thing to keep in mind is China dominates the global economic stage now, and it certainly dominates Asia. This is the data from the European Union's Trade Directorate. China's largest trading partner is no longer the US or the European Union. It is ASEAN, and it's at 614 billion euro. Next is the EU, and then you can go down the list. And as I always point out, everybody on that list is an American ally or an American well-wisher. So what have the Chinese been able to achieve in Asia? They've been able to move people away from a very strong pro-American position to one where they realize their economic bread and butter lies in greater cooperation with China. I do want to talk about Australia because there's this very naive idea that the Australians are power players. It's a small country. It's 23 million people. And, you know, the joke at the National Defense College in America is the Australians are good for looking after the bar. And if anybody has a question on this, please do ask. They do 160 billion Australian dollars of trade with China. The economic interdependency is huge. Mineral sales are what led to the boom in the Australian economy. 27 years, they didn't have a recession. 25% of their tourist revenues come from China. Most foreign students are from China, and they sell $12 billion of agro products. They cannot afford to play hardball with China, even though Scott Morrison was more Trumpian than Trump. And that then brings me to, okay, if the military and the economic side, as the three previous speakers pointed out, has considerable problems attached to them, what is workable? And I think the answer is you need a Quad which can talk non-traditional security issues and come up with an alternative economic vision, which is what Abhijit Singh was talking about for the Indo-Pacific. And three easy things to do in the next few years are, number one, an effective vaccine initiative. The Chinese, contrary to what people may say, have spread their vaccine across Asia. Indonesia, Philippines, Malaysia are being able to vaccinate their people because they've got the Chinese vaccine. They're now going to be making Sputnik 5, much as India is. and they are distributing it in Latin America, elsewhere. This is where the Japanese and the Australians need to put their money where their mouth is and suggest, let's build up India's vaccine capabilities. Because the last Quad meeting talked about 1 billion vaccines by the end of 2022. That's nothing, given that we're nearly a global population of 8 billion people. Second one, which I'm really interested in, is an Indo-Pacific educational initiative, because most of the Indo-Pacific has fallen behind the developed world in terms of having the skill sets which are needed in a globalized system. Third, the US in some way, shape, or form has to come back into the TPP. And I'll end with this one. Given everything that is going on in the cyber field, and given that the Indians, the Australians, the Japanese, and most of Asia is highly vulnerable to cyber attacks, it's time to talk about a cybersecurity architecture, which can be led by the Americans, bring everybody in, and start talking about how do you build resilience in that area. All right, that's it. Thank you very much. And thank you, Admiral Chauhan.